Europe. In a report which has set alarm bells ringing in Britain, it's emerged that the United Kingdom is the biggest audience for the jihadist propaganda content in Europe as far as the internet goes. More number of people in Britain were found to be viewing and reading jihadist propaganda in comparison to other nations of the European Union. But on the world stage, Britain was ranked 5th, with Turkey, the United States, Saudi Arabia and Iraq topping the list. In the wake of the recent spate of terror attacks across Europe, which have taken place also in the United Kingdom, security officials there are viewing the statistics with utmost seriousness. In fact, the government in Britain has told companies like Google and Facebook that they need to do much more to block jihadist content on their sites. Now, London and the United Kingdom have witnessed multiple terror strikes over the past year or so. In fact, one taking place very recently as far as that tube train goes in London just last weekend. Now, a report that has now come out has set off alarm bells in Britain because it claims that the UK is the biggest audience as far as jihadist propaganda content in Europe goes. Now, all of this, of course, is consumed on the internet. This report also suggests that more number of people in Britain are viewing and reading jihadist propaganda when compared with other European Union nations. However, when it comes to the world stage, Britain ranks 5th. It's countries like Turkey, the United States, Saudi Arabia and Iraq topping that list. My colleague Ankit Tuteja joining us live on the broadcast for more on that story. Ankit, it's apparent that the United Kingdom is facing a problem as far as this jihadist propaganda goes, and they have asked companies like Facebook and Google to step in. But really speaking, how much can internet companies stem, so to speak, the proliferation of this kind of content?
So, Aisha, we may be getting successful somewhere in defeating ISIS in countries like Iraq and Syria, but the fact is that we are not putting in enough efforts to defeat them virtually. And when I say virtually, it means on social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. It has been found that there has been an increase in the amount of content that they have been producing online over the last 3 years. If you talk about the numbers, ISIS movement produces around 100 articles on a weekly basis. And in terms of videos, which actually overcome the language barrier as well, they produce around 2,000 videos. Till now, they have produced around 2,000 videos. So clearly, there has been an increase in the amount of content that they have been producing online, that the movement has been actively working in the online space, be it Telegram, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube for that matter.
Right. And but Ankit, if I can also ask you in terms of how difficult or easy it is to report content like this. I mean, just taking Facebook for an example, if you have to report a post, then there's a multiple levels of, deciding why the post is offensive to you. You have to pick options. Do you feel that companies are also considering simplifying the process of reporting abusive or terrorist content? And I ask you this because I mean, then that whole question of, are people just going after certain individuals also comes up. So is there that kind of dilemma that companies like Facebook and Google face repeatedly?
So, Aisha, there is a new report that has come out by a think tank called Policy Exchange, and it has found that the steps that have been taken by social media companies so far to curb down on the content, on the ISIS content, has been inadequate. And when I talk about the content that is produced on the internet, we have to understand one thing here. In the real world, we have geographical boundaries, but when you talk about the internet, no one country owns the internet, and there are no geographical boundaries in the online space. So it becomes really difficult to crack down on content that is produced in the online space, or for that matter on the internet. And for that matter, when you talk about post videos on social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter for that matter, you have to understand that there are two ways by which companies actually crack down on such content. One is the algorithm, their built-in algorithm that they actually run to take offensive content offline. And another thing is that people, users like you and me, actually flag videos, and the companies take necessary corrective measures to actually take those content offline.
Right.
But again, it's not a foolproof thing. So companies have so far been not so successful, and the governments have actually instructed them to take more corrective and more stringent measures to curb down on such content.
Sure, we leave it at that, Ankit. As you're pointing out, this is a problem of huge proportion, and I suppose the solution will have to be taken on a war footing. But Ankit Tuteja, thanks very much for joining us on the broadcast with your perspective on that story.